Alright, picking up where we left off. This here is the end of Project 4, Part 2. So, what we want to do now is we want to get a volume for this road coming up to this parking lot. If you don't know where we're at, check out my other ones. That'll get you caught up to this point here. Pretty much the gist is there's a road that has a good chunk of fill, a little bit of cut, because it matches this profile right here. So what I want to do is I would like to get a volume for this. Volumes are usually between two surfaces. So right now this is currently a corridor. Let's turn this corridor into a surface. Well, let's make a surface from this corridor. We'll go to its properties. Here's the parameters where we normally play. Looks like something is out of whack, but that's okay. It'll update. If we go here to surfaces, on the surfaces tab of the corridor properties, there's a button here that says create new surface. This here makes a new surface. Currently, just like any other surface, this is not defined. We can add two different kinds of data, feature lines and links. Our feature lines are really light. They're just P2 lines, which are the edges of those catches. So what I want to use in this case here is just all the different links that we have. I like to add all of them. So I'll add the top, I'll add the datum, I'll add any cuts, and I'll add my fills. Now I've made myself a surface. If at this point you hit OK, you're going to get some interesting tinning across the corners. There's a way to fix it with boundaries. I'll click on this for now. You can see our new road here, and if you notice, on a right click, there's an option here to add the corridor extents as an outer boundary. I'm not going to click that just yet. I'm just going to click OK. I'll rebuild my corridor. And now you see, here we go. I got myself 1 in 5 contours on my corridor. But this right here is what I'm talking about. Anywhere it's got the chance to kind of jump across. So you can see right there, the magenta lines are the exterior of my corridor. Anything outside those magenta lines is tin that really shouldn't be there because that's not part of the design. It's just jumping across the gap. If we change this to something with tins real quick, you can see it's tinning across here, which it shouldn't. You can see all this stuff is outside. So an easy fix is to add that boundary. So that's the surface. There's my corridor. Let's go back to the corridor properties. It goes back to the boundaries tab. If I right click, add the corridor extents as boundaries. The default is for shrink wrap. I'm going to rebuild everything. Now you can see my surface nicely matches my corridor. So far so good. But now that I've got two surfaces, I can compare them. So I could quickly go up here to the Analyze tab, the Volumes dashboard. I could go in here and build a new volume surface. And in this case here, I could say entrance road. And I could use the base surface of my existing ground. Oops, sorry, in this case, target, because that's what we're targeting. And my comparison surface will be my new road corridor surface. Not very creative name there, but it works. And it says, here you go, it's mostly fill, just like it looks. Here's my cumulative fill in cubic yards, and here's my cumulative cut. Not too bad, but for the moment I don't need that. But if we want to get back to it, we can see it's over here in the surfaces underneath the volume surface. What I'd like to do though is cut a series of samples across this, which will make some sections. In those sections, I can then compute the material for it. And when I compute the material for it, then I can look at each section as a good double check. So to do that, let's go back here. Let's make some sample lines. Sample lines want to go across an alignment. I have an alignment in here. I'm going to make myself a sample line collection. I'm going to call this one here sample lines of entrance road. Right now it can cut across all these surfaces. Even though it'll cut across corridors, it doesn't really come in for our volumes. So I am going to just let it sample target and I'm going to let it sample new road corridor surface. If you look over here, oops, there's new road corridor, there's new road corridor surface. If you look at these symbols, there's kind of a difficult thing to see, but there's a square one that has a corridor in it. That's the corridor itself. Then there's kind of a 5-sided one that looks like a surface, like a bit of a tin. That's the surface. So we want that one. Right now they're both existing ground. Let me change this guy from existing to finished, just so it'll be a different color. At least I hope so. I don't remember what's in this style. And then the other thing it's going to do is it gives me this cool toolbar here that basically says I can pick a point anywhere along these stations, or what I like to do in my case is I like to sample things by range of stations. There we go. That brings up this little box, and this little box here gives me a couple cool choices. In this case, I want it to go from the start, yes. I want to go to the end, yes. I want it to snap the alignment, yeah, that's fine. But then in this case here, this tells me 50 foot to the left, 50 foot to the right is how far the sample is going to be, so it's going to be 100 feet across the whole piece. That's good. It's going to sample one every 50 feet along tangents and curves. That's all we have right now, so those will be fine. And everything else for the moment is default is good, except for I would like to add one at the very beginning. So I'm going to say at station start true, and I want to put one at the very end. So I'll say true to that as well. Even though it's going to put it right there across the flat part. Nah, let's say false. There we go. Now I say okay. I get a series of little blue lines, as you can see. These little blue lines are across there. I can close this. I no longer wish to make any more samples. But now I can see my samples got stations, because that's what the style said to label them as. But in a few cases, as you can see, some of my samples don't fully cross all of my corridor, which in this case wouldn't cross all of my surface. So I'm just going to manually drag these guys out a bit past 50. It's not super important. We can do this at any point in time, but I just wanted to do it right now. Alright, there's some samples. If you want to see what those samples look like, let's go here and make some multiple section views. It'll ask me what alignment, so if I had multiple in this case, all of them would show up. But since this is all intro stuff, I only have one at a time. So there's my sample line group we just made, my sample alignment. Everything else is good. Right now, road section is what we got because this is default template and that's not my favorite section. The section placement, I'm just going to place them in draft mode. Draft is going to plot on this style basic, which is our only style. I'm going to double check basic and make sure that it's printing from the upper left corner. The array, when it lays out all these section views, it's going to start from the upper left. Everything else is just adjustments. Here's some plot area adjustments. Here's some, we can turn on and off different parts. Let's turn off print area and sheet border. That would just add extra boxes. And at this point in time, yeah, I'm not really going to change basic. I don't really care. We're going to go to automatic. It's going to print the two surfaces I've sampled. And for data bands, I don't need any extra stuff right now. Good enough. At this point, I can say create section views. It's going to create a batch of them from the upper left corner. So I'm going to pick right here. And everybody's going to go down and to the right. There we go. Now I got some samples. These samples here, you can see there's my little bit of fill. And in certain situations, here's a good one. There's a bit of fill and a little bit of cut. Right now that grid doesn't turn out the way I quite like. Like I said, I don't like this style. But one thing I do want to change is the way the grid prints out. So I'm going to use my layer properties manager to add an asterisk, type in grid, change all the grids in my drawing to some nice gray color to 52. Boom. Gonna X out of that, close this. All my grids are gray. Now I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to pick this to get to the, right there, section view style. Nope, there it is. Edit section view style. I'm going to make a few changes. The graph right now is 1:1, which is nice. The grid, though, currently is clipping to those two guys. So anytime it hits a vertical piece and a horizontal piece, it clips the grid and gives me this blank space. I want to see the whole grid, and let's shrink these guys up a little. So I only have one bubble instead of two boxes. I just have one box above and below. These are the padding boxes. That'll make everything look a little skinnier. And for display, I'm going to bop down to the bottom and turn off the drafting buffer, which is this pink box on the outside, which is at the bottom of the display. And just for kicks, let's turn on a couple of bottom numbers just so I can see. Bottom major, and that one should be major too. Yep, major. So I'll turn on some numbers down there. And while we're at it, let's set the bottom to an interval of 50. And let's set the left and right to 10. Those will be good. Good enough. Alright, now we have a significantly different looking section view. But now you can kind of see, here's a cut situation, fill situation. But now let's color it in. We can color this in pretty easy by going here to Analyze. We're going to compute a material. So if I click on Compute Material, it'll only give us the choice of anything that has samples on it. So right now, just this one alignment has this one sample group. We'll say OK. The default pops up like this, which makes it nice and easy. Right now I'm just looking for a cut and fill quantity. So I'm going to tell it that the existing ground is actually this target. Only the choices of samples in here. If we had sampled the corridor, it wouldn't show up in here, but since we made a surface from the corridor, it does. So there's our existing ground, and here's our datum. Datum, in this case here, is just the difference of what we got going on. We'll click OK. Any fills turn green, any cuts turn red, and in a situation where we have both, we have both. Looks pretty good. Now, these here have been added to this sample line group's volume. So if we go here and check alignments, and I check steep trail, nope. How about entrance road? The sample line group, sample line road, section view groups, sections. Yep, there they are. Ground removed, ground filled. Both of those guys are in here. Let's go to annotate real quick. Let's make a table. In this case here, we can make let's do a total volume table. Total volume table is going to want to print from the upper left as well. This time here is going to give us a cut and fill table. Right now that's our only style that we have. We only have the one road and the one group, which is perfect. We only have one material list, and because I was lazy, I did not name it. I don't want to split the table. Just one big table will be fine. I don't have that many sections, but I do want it to be dynamic in case I change things. Say OK. It looks like it's going to center it, but it should really go from the upper left. And there we go. Now we can look at this table here, and we see it's something like, let's pick a station that has both cut and fill. Yeah, about 1 plus 50. Here we have a chunk of fill with a little bit of cut. And if we look at this table here, 1 plus 50, we can see that we have a fill area of 27. Oops, sorry. We'll go here and check 1 plus 50. We can see here's some fill, here's some cut, here's some fill volume, here's some cut volume. And that's for each of that area that it's currently sitting on. There's an area and there's a volume, which should be the average end of the one before it. And then here's a cumulative tracker, so we can see all the way down here that all together we have 7,000 fill, and we've got 1,800 cut So here's my find volume table, which is blinking every time I hover over it. So let me do one thing here in the options. Pop over here to selection, when a command is active or not active. I don't want it to highlight, so now I can hover over it. Here we go. 7,000 cumulative fill and about 1,800 cumulative cut. If we go here to check my entrance road, I check out its surface properties. I look on the statistics tab and I go to the volume. I can see here that my cut volume is around 1989, which is close to 1825. And my fill is 7,500 versus my 7,000. That's not too bad, because this doesn't quite include everything. It should be off by a certain percentage, but usually if it's within about 10%, which both of those appear to be pretty, about 100 and about 700, that's usually good enough for what I'm working with. Alright, that's usually my double check, and if I want to, there's a way to actually gauge this area, but I don't think at this point the properties of this includes any area numbers. Oh, there's one area, I guess. It's in square feet. So if I took that plus this one here, doubled it times the distance, and then divided it by half, I can do an average end like that and figure out that volume. But for this, it's not super important. That's for another day. Alright, that is getting relatively easy volumes from an existing surface. Hey there, thanks for listening to me for a few minutes. I have a handful of other videos. Some are the other parts of classes, but many are quick tips on using one aspect of the program without a lot of extra talk beforehand. If you want to hear extra talk, I usually talk at the end, so hang in there. Thanks again.